Andrew Eccles, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me in our respective humble abodes. Cheers, mate. Good to have you here.
You're drinking a beer and I've got a V, so
I just had a V. I like to live on the edge. No, I was doing a home workout prior to jumping on this, and I thought, you know what, it'd be nice to have a beer. I don't drink much at home. I've never been much of a home drinker. I didn't grow up like that. I guess a lot of people grow up and their family drinks at home, but I'm very rare for me to have a beer. Although I do like the occasional whiskey whilst riding. That's about it.
Whilst riding. Well, I was going to say definitely go with a beer. That's for sure.
Oh, mate, you got
whiskey and a beer go hand in hand.
Jesus.
What sort of beer? What sort of beer do you drink? What's that?
Mate, this is a pure blonde. I usually drink the Burley Big Heads, which is a zero carb beer. But since being on tour for 18 months, I put on a bit of weight, so I had to drop the carbs and basically get back on a ketogenic diet and really focus on that. And so I'm going to come out of this this COVID business looking flash, looking quick. Don't worry about
that. Okay, so you're on the keto diet. What meats are you consuming? What's your main go-to? Chicken, beef?
So I obviously I go for because it's a high fat diet, low carb. You've got to go for the more higher fat cuts. You're looking at your New York steaks. You're looking at grass-fed sort of stuff. I don't fuck around with that shit. Bit of lamb. But you know, hey, I'm not against chicken. I'm not racist. It's all good. You know, I'll take whatever I can get. You got to mix it up, of course. But basically, it's a majority meat diet. You know, we met we met through the internet, but through a mutual friend of ours, Adam Greentree, the hunter extraordinaire. And he rang me the other night and said, mate, I've got to send you some deer. And I've never had deer ever.
Really?
In my life. I've never had any type of game meat. So I'm very interested to see what that's like.
I think you'd fall in love with it. You know, I think it's one of those meats which is versatile with what you can cook with as well. Like whether it's like a stir fry or even if you want to put it on the barbecue, you know, there's definitely a way of cooking it. But you know, with game meats as well, like buffalo, pig, goat. There's quite a diversity that we've got here in Australia that you can essentially, you can change things up pretty fast when you're walking through the Australian bush. And it's funny because I feel like a lot of these animals you find in the same habitat as well. So it's like its own supermarket out there. So who knows? Yeah. Like maybe your keto diet can somewhat be broadened in the near future for sure.
Mate, absolutely. Particularly with what's happening in the world. It's something I think a lot of people have been thinking about is hunting, is creating their own veggie patches, is, you know, being sustainable within their own family or their unit around their house sort of thing, you know, like the few, maybe a block or a street or something, you know, like it's funny how there is this massive reliance. You know, I've grown up with it. And I'm sure you have too. Well, maybe not you, and it's certainly not Adam. I grew up with such a reliance on the supermarket that those trucks will just turn up, and I don't have to think about anything else. Whereas now there's that, you know, there's a lack of toilet paper, something we've never thought would run out. Now you start to think, oh, what happens if there's no steak on the shelves? What happens if there's no chicken? 100%. What happens if there's no broccoli?
Right. And I think, you know what, I think it's only natural that people go into this kind of survival way of thinking, you know, and I think any kind of survival way of thinking is thinking for the future and thinking long term. So you can kind of understand why people are going out there into the shops trying to, you know, hoard as much as they can because there's obviously the concern of the short supply. And I think it's a little bit different to the nomadic way of thinking because more nomadic styles were hunting in the present, so to say, you know, but it goes to show that our agricultural mindset is still in play and agricultural mindset is thinking for the future. So it's interesting, like as much as we want to feel and think and believe that we're not part of the natural world and our way of thinking has changed, you know, so much, it's quite untrue. I feel like a lot of the instinctive reactions that you're seeing when this has actually popped up, like with the virus of, you know, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do next week? These instinctive core things which are coming out are actually a part of us. It's like our primal sense of survivalism, to say the least. So I think in a way it's almost romantic to see that people are still in touch and aware of the essence of being in the moment, so to say.
Well, you have
But,
to. There has to be this at least background noise within your head when you go to bed at night and think, hang on, what if all the shit hits the fan? Like I'm certainly not prepared here. I've got a couple of knives hanging around. I've got a compound bow that I don't know if that's illegal to have. I've got a compound bow that's broken that Adam won't fix for me because he's too lazy. And I got all these things, but I don't have anything that can actually, I can use as a means to hunt something. I certainly don't have probably the most useful thing, and that is the knowledge. But it's certainly one of those things where we have so many things that go on in our daily lives, say 6 months ago, that we have that take precedence over everything else. And now that we're stuck inside our house and they're running out of toilet paper and you can't wipe your ass, people start going, okay, well, maybe there's more things that we need to worry about. Like I've certainly noticed that there's less fights on Twitter. There's less people carrying on about things that don't matter. People are literally, they're worried about death. As time's gone on and we're not thinking so much about death as we were maybe a month ago when everyone was shit scared, I think people are going to start to come back and, they want to pick fights. But it's quite interesting to see how people have reacted to this whole situation.
Well, I think, as soon as you start taking those comforts of society down, like we're always born with this like blanket safety security net of knowledge that no matter what happens, the government's going to be there and we're going to be fine. And I think, we obviously live in probably the best place on earth,
Absolutely.
Some other places though, the way it's hit them and how they're going to try and bounce back and essentially sustain themselves, it's literally, it'd be interesting to see what the mind space would be on someone living in a very poor developing country, because they themselves are living day by day. So whether this would affect them or not, I think
New Zealand or something like that.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
But no, you're right.
Yeah,
it is a thing.
Exactly.
Like, is a third world country putting the same processes in place that that ScoMo's government is? And the answer is definitely not. They're trying, I'm sure, but they just don't have the infrastructure in place to do that. And the people are alone. Like, as you said, we live in the best country, but we also live in the best time ever to have this problem coming around.
100%. I agree. 100%. And I think, perhaps Australia's fast reaction to this virus has, been on the basis that, well, Asia is our next door neighbor, quite literally. I know particularly here in the Northern Territory, they were very close, very quick to closing down the borders on the basis of the concerns with, the Indigenous population, but also, tourism. Tourism is going to be affected so bad here in Australia, particularly the top end. Like, if we lose the dry season up here, so essentially from June to August, that's, another year that people are going to have to wait around. And particularly for these small, ecotourism operators and stuff, it's going to absolutely devastate them. So I think the next 12 months is going to be very interesting to see how the Australian public bounces back from this. But, one thing I've definitely learned with Australian people is, we're versatile, we can adapt, we can evolve, and we're fucking tolerant, you know what I mean? That's one thing about us. I think the social climate is that, nothing can beat us, nothing can get us down, and we will stick together. I think that's something that I love about Australia. We've really got that deep in our psyche.